After everything I did for him, he chose her. It is still difficult to put into words how deeply that cut me. I remember the early days, when he was broken, his heart a fragile thing barely held together by the thinnest threads of hope. I saw his pain and, without hesitation, offered him the safest place I could create. I gave him my time, my patience, my endless belief that he could find happiness again. I was not just willing to help him heal, I needed to help him heal. It felt like fate had placed us together in the exact moment when we both needed someone to believe in. At first, he clung to me like a man adrift in a storm. I listened to every word he spoke, held him through his worst nights, and celebrated the smallest victories with him. I thought we were building something real, something unshakable. Hope bloomed inside me, fragile yet persistent. I imagined a future where the shadows of his past would eventually fade, leaving only the life we would create together. But despite all the love I poured into him, all the comfort and encouragement I gave, he made a choice I never saw coming. He turned away from everything we had shared and returned to the woman who had once broken him. We met during a season of endings. He had just finalized a divorce that left him hollow, a man walking through life without truly seeing anything around him. I still remember the first time our paths crossed, how he carried sadness like an old, heavy coat he could not seem to shrug off. There was a loneliness about him that called out to something deep inside me, something that understood what it meant to lose a piece of yourself and wonder if you would ever find it again. At first, our conversations were surface-level, polite exchanges shared over casual encounters. But gradually, the words grew deeper, heavier, more meaningful. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, he opened up to me. He spoke about the betrayal he had experienced, the dreams he had buried when his marriage fell apart, and the gnawing fear that maybe he would never be enough for anyone again. I listened without judgment, offering him not solutions, but a steady, unwavering presence. It was never about fixing him. It was about being there when he needed someone the most. Our bond formed quietly, like a fire that catches slowly before it burns brightly. We spent long nights talking, sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. There was something healing in those conversations, an unspoken agreement that neither of us had to pretend. The walls he had built around his heart began to crack, and I was there to see the light start to slip through. He would smile sometimes, small and cautious at first, but those moments felt like victories. Each time he laughed, each time he shared a hope or a memory, it felt like we were weaving something stronger between us. I remember one evening when we sat on a worn bench at the edge of the park, our breath rising like mist in the chilly air. He told me he had not felt this peaceful in years. He said it in a voice so raw and genuine that it carved itself into my memory, a moment I would replay in my mind far too often later on. In that moment, I believed we were building something beautiful together, something real and lasting. There were small moments that felt monumental. The way he would reach for my hand without thinking, the way he would lean into me when he laughed, as if he could not help but seek my presence. We shared meals, we shared fears, we shared dreams spoken softly in the quiet hours when the world felt still. He told me once that I made him feel seen, that I had a way of understanding the words he could not bring himself to say. I carried that compliment like a treasure, believing it meant we were moving toward a future where neither of us would ever have to feel invisible again. Sometimes, he would grow quiet, retreating into his memories, and I would simply sit beside him, letting him know he did not have to face those ghosts alone. I never pressured him to move faster than he was ready. I thought patience would be the key, that if I loved him enough, waited long enough, he would eventually step fully into the life we were building together. It never occurred to me that maybe, no matter how much love I gave, it would not be enough to erase what he had lost. He began to trust me with the delicate pieces of his heart. He spoke about his fears of failing again, of letting someone down, of not being able to be the man he thought he was supposed to be. I listened to each confession as if it were a fragile thing, holding it gently, never once thinking it was a burden. In my mind, love meant standing beside someone even when they were struggling to stand on their own. As the weeks turned into months, our lives began to intertwine more deeply. It was not just the big moments, but the ordinary ones too. Grocery shopping trips where we laughed over silly choices, lazy afternoons spent reading side by side, quiet dinners where the silence between us felt comfortable rather than strained. Every small act of closeness felt like another brick in the foundation we were building. I thought, foolishly perhaps, that these moments were promises being made, silent assurances that we were moving toward a shared future. He started leaving more of his things at my place. A favorite jacket draped over the back of a chair, a well-worn book tucked into the shelf beside mine. I would find traces of him everywhere, small reminders that he was choosing to be part of my world. Each new toothbrush, each forgotten coffee mug, felt like a whisper of hope. I let myself believe that he was planting roots here with me, that together we were growing something that could weather any storm. I never once doubted that his heart was healing. I could see it in the way he stood a little taller, smiled a little easier, laughed a little louder. I believed, with every fiber of my being, that we were both healing each other. That the love I offered freely and without condition was filling the empty spaces he thought would remain barren forever. Looking back, I realize how much faith I placed in fragile things. I trusted in the quiet comfort we shared, the laughter, the gentle touches, the late-night conversations. I built a future in my mind based on every small, beautiful moment we had created together. I believed that when he was ready to love again, it would be me he would choose, because I had been there through the darkest of nights, offering light when he had none left. What I did not see, what I refused to see, was that sometimes love is not enough to fix what is broken. Sometimes, no matter how much you give, the pieces never quite fit together the way you hope. But in those early days, I did not know that. I only knew the simple, blinding truth that I loved him, and I believed with all my heart that we were building something that would last. It did not happen all at once, but I began to notice small changes in him. The man who had once seemed so weighed down by sadness started to smile more often. Not just the polite smiles he wore in public to hide his pain, but real, genuine smiles that lit up his entire face. I could see it in the way he carried himself too. His steps grew lighter, his laughter more frequent, his eyes less shadowed by old grief. It was as if, little by little, the life he thought he had lost was beginning to return to him. I never pressured him to move faster than he was ready. I simply stood by his side, offering encouragement when he needed it and space when he did not. I celebrated every small victory with him, whether it was a good day at work, a new hobby he picked up, or just a moment when he chose hope over despair. Watching him rebuild his life made me feel proud, not just of him, but of what we were creating together. It felt like a shared triumph, a journey we had both undertaken. Our bond deepened as we created memories beyond the quiet corners of our conversations. We decided to take a short trip together, a weekend getaway to a small coastal town neither of us had ever visited. It was a simple trip, nothing extravagant, but it felt monumental. We wandered through sleepy streets, held hands as we explored local shops, and sat by the shore watching the waves roll in. It was during that trip that I caught glimpses of the man he must have been before heartbreak had weathered him. There was laughter, teasing, shared glances that spoke volumes. In those moments, the world outside of us ceased to exist. It was just him and me, and the quiet certainty that we belonged together. Meeting each other's families and friends was another step that felt natural, almost inevitable. He met my closest friends first, and I remember the nerves I felt, hoping they would see in him what I did. They welcomed him warmly, charmed by his sincerity and the subtle ways he showed his affection for me. I could see their approval in the way they smiled at me when they thought I was not looking. Later, I met his family too, though he was more cautious about it. His parents had been deeply hurt by his divorce, and trust did not come easily to them. But with time, they accepted me, seeing the way he seemed lighter, happier, when we were together. His mother even pulled me aside one evening and thanked me, saying she had not seen her son smile like that in years. I carried that moment in my heart, a quiet affirmation that I was doing something right. Our relationship grew in ways that felt both thrilling and terrifying. One evening, as we sat curled up on the couch watching an old movie, he whispered, "I love you," into the quiet space between us. It was not grand or rehearsed. It was raw and real. I could hear the vulnerability in his voice, see the fear in his eyes as he waited for my response. I told him I loved him too, and in that moment, it felt like the universe had aligned perfectly. All the waiting, all the patience, had been worth it. We were no longer two people trying to heal separately. We were partners, building something new together. Soon after, we began talking about moving in together. It was a conversation that unfolded naturally, without pressure or ultimatums. We both wanted to share more of our lives, to wake up and fall asleep with the comfort of knowing the other was there. Finding a place that felt like ours was exciting. We spent weekends visiting apartments, imagining what our life would look like within different walls, different neighborhoods. When we finally chose a small, sunlit apartment with creaky floors and a tiny balcony, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Moving in together brought its own set of challenges and adjustments, but none that felt insurmountable. We learned each other's routines, discovered quirks and habits that had been easy to hide before. There were small disagreements about things like where to put the dishes or how to organize the closet, but we navigated them with laughter and compromise. Every time we overcame a hurdle, it felt like we were solidifying the foundation of what we were building. We created rituals too, Sunday morning coffee runs, Friday night takeout on the couch, lazy Saturday afternoons spent wrapped up in each other's arms. Life was not perfect, but it was ours, and it felt more real and more beautiful than anything I had ever known. We spoke often about the future, weaving dreams together late at night when the world outside seemed far away. He talked about wanting to travel more, about maybe getting a dog someday, about finding a job that made him excited to get up in the morning. I shared my own dreams, and he listened with a tenderness that made me believe he was picturing himself right there beside me, every step of the way. We talked about someday getting married, in a casual, almost shy way, as if daring to hope too boldly might scare the dream away. But it was there, hanging in the air between us, the shared understanding that we were building a life meant to last. There were moments when he would look at me with an expression so full of gratitude that it nearly broke me. He would thank me for being patient, for believing in him when he could not believe in himself. He said more than once that he did not know where he would be if he had not met me. Those words wrapped around my heart, reinforcing my belief that what we had was not just love, but something deeper, something built on true understanding and resilience. I felt, perhaps arrogantly, that I had saved him, that my love had reached into the dark places he thought he would never escape and pulled him back into the light. I saw the progress he had made, the happiness that had returned to his life, and I believed it was because of what we shared. I believed that love, real love, had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. I had no reason to doubt him, no reason to doubt us. In those days, the future seemed like a wide open road stretching out before us, full of possibilities and promises. I trusted him completely, and I trusted in the strength of what we had built together. Looking back, I realize how easy it is to see only what you want to see when your heart is fully invested. I thought we were walking the same path, heading toward the same destination. I did not see the detours he was quietly considering, the pull of a past he had never truly let go of. But in those golden months, when love felt simple and sure, I allowed myself to believe that we had made it. That the worst was behind us and that the future would be ours to shape. I held onto that belief with both hands, unaware of how quickly and how cruelly it would all begin to unravel. It did not happen all at once. If it had, perhaps it would have been easier to see, easier to confront. Instead, it began with the smallest things, so small I almost convinced myself they were nothing. He started spending more time on his phone, sending messages he would quickly clear from the screen when I happened to glance his way. I told myself it was work. He had always said he wanted to find a new job, something he could be passionate about. Maybe he was networking, maybe he was building new connections. I did not want to be the kind of partner who questioned every small thing. I believed trust meant giving each other space, even when small doubts whispered in the back of my mind. There were other changes too, changes I tried to ignore. He grew quieter, more distracted, as if there was a constant conversation happening in his mind that I was not a part of. We still had good days, moments that felt normal and warm, but there were stretches where he seemed 1,000 miles away even when he was sitting right beside me. When I asked if everything was all right, he would smile, touch my hand, and say he was just tired or stressed. And because I loved him, because I trusted the man I thought I knew, I accepted his words without pushing too hard. One evening, I overheard him speaking softly in the other room. At first, I thought nothing of it. It was not unusual for him to call friends or family. But there was something about the tone of his voice, the softness, the intimacy, that made me pause. I did not want to eavesdrop. I told myself to respect his privacy. Still, my heart raced as I caught fragments of the conversation. A familiar name floated through the air like a ghost from the past. His ex-wife. He was talking to her. I felt a rush of confusion, anger, and fear all at once. When he came back into the room, I tried to act casual, but I must have failed because he immediately asked if something was wrong. I shook my head. Later that night, lying in bed with him, feeling the distance between us grow wider, I gathered my courage and asked him directly. I asked if he had been speaking with her. His body tensed for a moment before he sighed and admitted that he had. He told me it was nothing to worry about, that they were only talking because they needed closure, that there were still loose ends from the divorce, financial matters, lingering questions, things that could not simply be left to rot. He told me he loved me, that I was his future, not her. He said it so earnestly, looking me straight in the eye, and I wanted to believe him. Every part of me wanted to believe that what we had was stronger than old wounds and lingering regrets. After that conversation, I tried to bury my unease. I told myself that I had to be understanding. Divorce was messy, complicated. It was unrealistic to think that his past could be completely erased. I reminded myself of all the times he had chosen me, all the promises he had made. I convinced myself that his heart was firmly rooted in the life we were building together. But even as I tried to silence my fears, the signs kept coming. He started mentioning her more often, usually in passing, usually as part of a larger story or reflection. It was never anything overtly romantic. Sometimes it was frustration over something she had done or said. Sometimes it was wistfulness about better times long past. Each mention was a small stone tossed into the calm surface of my heart, sending ripples of doubt through me. There were other moments too. Nights when he claimed he had to stay late at work, but when he came home he seemed unsettled, distracted. Times when he was lost in thought, staring off into the distance with an expression I could not read. I would ask him what was wrong, and he would smile and say it was nothing, just tired, just work stress. Always the same reassurances, always the same gentle dismissal. I wanted so badly to trust him. I clung to the belief that love meant faith, that relationships were built on trust and patience. I reminded myself of all the beautiful moments we had shared, the future we had dreamed about together. I told myself that if I started questioning him, if I let insecurity seep into the foundation of what we had built, I would be the one tearing it apart. I loved him too much to risk that. I loved him too much to believe that he could hurt me. So I smiled when he told me he needed space to figure things out. I nodded understandingly when he said he was reconnecting with old friends, trying to rebuild parts of his life that had been neglected. I accepted his explanations, even when they made the small, quiet voice inside me scream in protest. I told myself that he deserved the benefit of the doubt, that love was about giving without demanding, trusting without doubting. But in the dark, alone with my thoughts, the cracks in the foundation of our relationship yawned wider. I could not ignore the knot in my stomach, the way my heart ached with a fear I dared not name. I reassured myself with memories of his smiles, his promises, the nights we had held each other and dreamed out loud. I told myself that love was not easy, that it required perseverance and strength. And still, in the quiet moments when he was not looking, I wondered. I wondered if I was losing him. I wondered if the pieces I had helped him pick up and rebuild were slipping through my fingers. I wondered if he had ever truly been mine at all. Despite everything, I chose to believe in him. I chose to trust that the love we had built together could withstand whatever shadows lingered from his past. I chose to believe that if I just loved him enough, supported him enough, he would stay. That we would weather this storm like we had weathered all the others before. I could not know then that the storm was not something we would face together. It was something that would tear us apart. I could not know that the future I had so carefully imagined was already crumbling beneath my feet. I could not know that no matter how fiercely I held on, some things were already too far gone to save. It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of day where the sky seems to press heavily against the earth, where everything feels heavier and slower. I was cleaning the living room, picking up stray coffee cups and tossing magazines into a neat pile, when his phone buzzed on the table. Normally, I never would have touched it. I believed in privacy, in trust, in the space every person deserves. But something that day felt different. Maybe it was the way he had been acting lately, maybe it was the uneasiness that had taken root in my heart and refused to let go. My hands moved almost without my permission, reaching for the phone. The message was short, simple, but it cut through me like a blade. I cannot wait to see you tonight. I miss you. It was signed with her name. His ex-wife. The woman I had helped him heal from. The woman I had spent countless nights reassuring him he was better without. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment I just stood there, staring at the words, hoping I was reading them wrong, hoping there was some innocent explanation. But deep down, I already knew. My mind raced. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he was trying to get closure, to end things cleanly. Maybe it was something else, something that did not mean what it clearly looked like it meant. But even as I tried to build these flimsy walls of denial, I knew they would not hold. They could not hold against the truth staring me in the face. I waited for him to come home. Every ticking second felt like a lifetime. Every sound from outside made my heart jump into my throat. When he finally walked through the door, shaking off the rain and smiling like nothing was wrong, I felt a surge of emotions I could barely contain. Anger, sadness, fear, love, betrayal. They collided inside me with a force that left me trembling. I held up his phone, the message still open, the evidence undeniable. I did not speak. I did not have to. His face fell immediately, the color draining away, the smile disappearing as quickly as it had come. He knew. He knew there was no talking around this, no simple lie that could patch over the gaping hole he had torn open. For a long moment, we just stood there, the rain tapping against the windows, the air between us thick with everything unspoken. Finally, I found my voice, though it sounded strange and hollow to my own ears. I asked him if it was true. I asked him if he had been seeing her. He did not deny it. He did not even try. His shoulders sagged, and he nodded, the movement small and broken. He told me that he had been seeing her for a few weeks now. That at first, it had been innocent. Conversations about closure, about loose ends, about forgiveness. But somewhere along the way, old feelings had resurfaced. Feelings he thought he had buried. Feelings he realized he had never truly let go of. I asked him the question I was almost too afraid to ask. I asked him if he still loved her. He looked at me with eyes full of sorrow and regret, and he said yes. He said he had never really stopped loving her. That no matter how hard he had tried to move on, a part of his heart had always remained with her. He said he had thought he could build a new life with me, that he had truly tried, and that he did love me, just not in the way I deserved to be loved. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Everything I had believed in, everything I had worked for, everything I had hoped for, it all crumbled in an instant. I had given him my heart, my time, my patience, my love. I had helped him heal, I had helped him rebuild, and in the end, I was nothing more than a bridge he had crossed to get back to her. I asked him why he had not been honest sooner. Why he had let me believe in a future that was never truly ours. He could not give me a good answer. He said he had been confused, scared, guilty. He said he had not wanted to hurt me. As if dragging out the inevitable, as if lying to my face, had somehow spared me pain. Then he said the words that shattered me completely. He said he was leaving. That he was going back to her. That he believed it was for the best. For him, for her, even for me. He said I deserved someone who could love me fully, without reservations, without shadows from the past haunting every moment. I wanted to scream at him, to rage, to demand how he could make that decision for me, how he could so casually throw away everything we had built. But all I could do was stand there, the weight of betrayal crushing the air from my lungs. I nodded, because what else was there to say? I could not force him to stay. I could not force him to love me. He packed a bag that night. I watched him move around the house, gathering his things, and I felt like I was watching a stranger. This was not the man I had fallen in love with, the man I had helped heal, the man I had dreamed a future with. This was someone else, someone I no longer recognized. When he left, he paused at the door, looking back at me one last time. He said he was sorry, that he wished things had been different. Then he turned and walked into the rain, disappearing into the night and out of my life. I sat on the couch for a long time after he was gone, listening to the rain, feeling the emptiness settle around me. I thought about all the nights we had spent talking about our dreams, our fears, our hopes. I thought about the way he had smiled at me, the way he had held my hand, the way he had told me I was his future. I thought about how easily all of it had unraveled. I realized then that sometimes, no matter how much love you pour into someone, no matter how much you give, you cannot fill a heart that is already full of someone else. You cannot fight a battle you were never meant to win. And no matter how much it breaks you, sometimes the only thing left to do is let go. I did not know then how I would pick up the pieces. I did not know how I would find the strength to move forward. All I knew was that I had loved him with everything I had, and it had not been enough. And somehow, some way, I would have to learn to live with that. The days after he left blended together in a haze of pain and disbelief. I would wake up each morning with a moment of peace, a moment when the world still seemed normal, when I had not yet remembered what had happened. And then it would hit me, all over again, like a blow to the chest, knocking the breath from my lungs. He was gone. He had chosen her. After everything we had been through, after everything we had shared, he had walked away as if none of it had ever truly mattered. I spent hours sitting on the couch, staring at the blank television screen, unable to move, unable to think. I barely ate. I barely slept. Every memory we had made together played over and over in my mind like a cruel movie I could not turn off. I wondered if he had ever truly loved me, or if I had just been a distraction, a temporary comfort until he could find his way back to her. Was I nothing more than a rebound? A placeholder? The questions gnawed at me, hollowing me out from the inside. There were moments when the sadness was so overwhelming that it felt like I was drowning in it, gasping for air in a sea of heartbreak. Other times, the sadness gave way to anger, hot and blinding. I would find myself pacing the house, clutching at my chest, cursing his name, cursing myself for being so blind, so foolish. I had given him everything, every piece of myself, and he had discarded me without a second thought. Worse than the anger was the self-blame. I replayed every conversation, every decision, searching for the moment where I had gone wrong. Maybe if I had been prettier, smarter, more exciting, he would have stayed. Maybe if I had tried harder, loved him more fiercely, he would have realized I was enough. I tortured myself with endless what-ifs, building an intricate web of guilt and shame that trapped me in my grief. My friends and family tried to reach out, leaving voicemails and text messages full of concern and love. For a long time, I ignored them. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, as if their pity would somehow make my pain more real. I did not want to talk about what had happened. I did not want to see the sympathy in their eyes or hear the reassurance in their voices. I just wanted to disappear, to slip away into the silence of my broken heart. But grief has a way of stripping you down to your barest self, and in that vulnerable state, I finally realized I could not heal alone. One evening, after days of isolation, I answered a call from my best friend. She did not ask questions or offer advice. She just listened as I cried, as I poured out all the hurt and anger and confusion I had been holding inside. She reminded me that I was not alone, that I was loved, that my worth was not defined by the choices he had made. Slowly, painfully, I began to piece myself back together. It started with small things, a shower, a meal, a walk outside. Each act of self-care felt monumental, a declaration that I was still here, still fighting. My friends rallied around me, taking turns visiting, bringing food, distracting me with movies and silly conversations. They reminded me of who I was before him, of the life I had built for myself, a life that was still waiting for me to reclaim. As the weeks passed, the rawness of the pain began to dull. It did not disappear, but it became manageable, a wound that I could live with rather than be consumed by. I stopped checking his social media, stopped replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. I focused on myself, on healing, on rediscovering the parts of me that had been lost in the shadow of our love. Then one day, a mutual acquaintance mentioned, almost in passing, that things between him and his ex-wife were not going as smoothly as he had hoped. There were rumors of arguments, of mistrust, of old wounds reopening. I listened quietly, feeling a complicated swirl of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated, a small, bitter satisfaction that he was not finding the perfect happiness he had thrown me away for. But mostly I felt sadness, not for him, but for the reality that sometimes, love is not enough to erase the past. I realized then that it had never really been about me. His decision to go back to her had nothing to do with my worth, my value, or my love. It had been about his own unresolved feelings, his own unfinished business. I had been caught in the crossfire of a story that was not mine to begin with. Understanding that did not erase the pain, but it helped me begin to let go of the self-blame. It helped me see that his betrayal was not a reflection of my inadequacy, but of his own confusion and weakness. I deserved better. I deserved someone who chose me, wholeheartedly and without hesitation. I started therapy, working through the layers of hurt and mistrust that had built up inside me. I journaled every day, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto paper, giving them a place to exist outside of myself. I explored hobbies I had long forgotten, rekindling passions that had nothing to do with him. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who reminded me of my strength, my resilience, my worth. Healing was not linear. There were setbacks, days when the grief would hit me out of nowhere, leaving me gasping for air all over again. There were nights when I would dream of him, waking up with tears streaming down my face. But each time, I picked myself back up, a little stronger, a little wiser than before. I learned to forgive myself for loving him, for believing in us. Love is never a mistake, even when it does not last. It is a testament to the heart's capacity for hope, for vulnerability, for connection. I had loved fully and deeply, and there was no shame in that. In time, the memories of him lost their sharp edges. I stopped seeing his face everywhere I went. I stopped feeling the ache of his absence in every quiet moment. I started seeing myself again, not as the woman he left behind, but as the woman who survived, who grew, who reclaimed her life. I began to trust again, not in others, but in myself. In my ability to heal, to love, to build a future that was mine alone. I realized that true healing is not about forgetting the pain or erasing the past. It is about carrying it with you, but not letting it define you. It is about finding beauty in the broken places, strength in the scars. And so, piece by piece, day by day, I stitched myself back together. Not into the person I had been before him, but into someone new. Someone stronger, wiser, braver. Someone who knew her worth, who knew that she deserved a love that chose her without hesitation, without doubt. I did not know what the future would hold. I did not know when or if I would find love again. But for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid. Because I knew that no matter what came next, I would be ready. I would be whole. I would be enough. I spent a long time reflecting on everything I had given. I thought about the countless hours I had spent comforting him, encouraging him, believing in him when he could not believe in himself. I thought about the nights we stayed up talking about our dreams, about the future we both said we wanted. I remembered the trips, the laughter, the quiet, intimate moments that had made me believe we were building something lasting and real. I had given him my heart, my trust, my hope for the future. I had loved him through his brokenness, offering a safe place for him to heal, believing that we would grow stronger together because of it. But in the end, none of it had been enough to make him stay. None of it had been enough to erase his past or rewrite the story he still believed he was meant to live. And for a while, that knowledge broke me. It made me question everything. My judgment, my worth, my ability to trust and to love. It made me doubt the goodness I had given so freely. But over time, as the pain slowly ebbed, a new understanding took its place. I realized that my love had not been wasted. My kindness, my patience, my unwavering support, they were reflections of who I was, not of how he chose to value them. I deserved better. I deserved someone who would not see my love as a stepping stone back to the past, but as a foundation for a future built together. I deserved someone who would choose me fully, without hesitation, without looking back. And even though I had not found that with him, it did not diminish my worth. It did not mean I was lacking. It meant that he was not the one capable of matching the depth of what I had to offer. Letting go of the what-ifs was the hardest part. For so long, they had haunted me. What if I had said something different? Done something more? Been someone else? But the truth was that no amount of changing or sacrificing would have altered the path he chose. His decision to return to his ex-wife had nothing to do with my shortcomings and everything to do with his unresolved past. It was not my burden to carry, and it was not my responsibility to fix. I finally understood that sometimes we are the bridge for someone else's healing. We offer them love, support, and a safe place to mend, but we are not meant to be their final destination. We are not obligated to destroy ourselves in the process of saving someone else. True love should never require the complete erasure of our own needs, our own dreams, our own hearts. The realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because it meant accepting that the story I had so deeply believed in was over. Liberating because it meant I could finally step out of the shadows of that lost future and into the light of a new beginning. I no longer needed to carry the weight of his choices. I no longer needed to make sense of his betrayal. It was enough to know that I had loved fully and honestly. It was enough to know that I had stayed true to myself. As I moved forward, I made a promise to myself. I would never again lose myself trying to save someone else. I would never again mistake being needed for being loved. I would honor my own heart, my own journey, with the same tenderness and devotion I had once given so freely to him. Life slowly began to open up in new ways. I reconnected with old friends, pursued passions I had put aside, and allowed myself to dream again. Not about another relationship, not yet, but about the life I wanted to create for myself. A life filled with purpose, with joy, with a deep and abiding love for the person I was becoming. I still thought of him sometimes, but the memories no longer carried the sharp sting they once did. They were simply part of the story, a chapter that had ended. I could remember the good moments without clinging to them, without wishing for what might have been. I could see the ways in which loving him had shaped me, made me stronger, wiser, more resilient. Healing is not a straight line. It is messy and painful and often slower than we want it to be. But with each step, I felt myself growing. I felt myself becoming whole again, not because of someone else, but because of the love and care I was finally giving myself. In the quiet moments, when the world slowed down and I sat alone with my thoughts, I found a deep, abiding peace. I had survived the heartbreak. I had survived the loss. And in surviving, I had rediscovered the strength that had been within me all along. I knew now that love is not about saving someone. It is about standing beside them, supporting them, but never losing yourself along the way. True love is mutual, equal, built on trust and respect and a shared commitment to growth. Anything less is not love. It is a lesson. As I turned the page on that chapter of my life, I carried the lessons with me, but I left the pain behind. I was no longer defined by what had happened to me. I was defined by how I rose from it, how I rebuilt, how I loved myself enough to walk away from what no longer served me. The future stretched out before me, wide and full of possibility. I did not know what it would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it. Ready to write a new story, one where I was the hero of my own life, not the background character in someone else's journey back to their past. I smiled to myself, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. I had loved, I had lost, and I had found myself again. And that, more than anything, was the true victory. I was not broken. I was not abandoned. I was free. And my story was just beginning.